It was an attack so bizarrely motivated yet so brutal that it baffled and frightened the entire nation. This is the case with the Kyoto Animation Studio Massacre. Japan's assault and homicide rates, for instance, are significantly lower here than they are in most other countries. A poll conducted in 2016 found that Japan had the lowest murder rate in the world, at around 0.3 per 100,000. That being said, Japanese media almost always portray murders as very brutal. This case takes place in Kyoto, the historic capital of Japan. Even though Tokyo has been declared the capital, Kyoto is still regarded as the cultural heart of Japan. There are so many beautiful palaces, gardens, and shrines dedicated to Shinto and Buddhism that any visitor might spend months here without getting bored. Kyoto is not merely a city steeped in history. It has also made great strides into the modern world, despite its many historic landmarks and cultural institutions. From dynamic skylines and sophisticated architecture to superb infrastructure, Kyoto provides everything that a company or business may want when deciding where to set up a business. Kyoto Animation was among the businesses. In 1981, Hideaki Hata and his wife Yoko started a tiny production services company that would eventually become Kyoto Animation, one of Japan's most successful studios. Kyoto Animation's superb production qualities and a keen awareness of life's beauties and perplexities have earned it widespread acclaim throughout the years. They also paid their staff on a salary basis rather than using freelancers like the majority of other studios. By providing in-house training, they hope to inspire workers to choose quality over quantity. Over the years, Kyoto Animation expanded, and the firm moved its headquarters from Uji City to Kyoto's Fushimiku neighborhood, where it opened a new facility popularly known as Studio One. They went on to make groundbreaking works like Clannad, K-On!, and A Silent Voice in the world of animation. By the year 2019, Kyoto Animation had established a stellar reputation for both its quality goods and its ethical business dealings. All the favorable attention will come with its fair share of criticism, though, as is the case with any kind of fame. It's true that some people would find Kyoto Animation's output dull, and others might discover reasons to despise the studio's commercial strategy. However, I'm referring to a tiny subset of the population who would generate unnecessary animosity simply because they could. Also, Shinji Aoba is the name of one such person. Shinji Aoba was a 40-year-old man who lived in Saitama in the year 2019. He entered this world on May 16, 1978. Midoriku is a ward in Saitama City where he spent his childhood. But his parents divorced when he was young, leaving him with his dad and 2 siblings. Shinji's life was troubled even when he was an adult. His friends said he was often absent and angry. After finishing college, he started working as a part-time clerk at a supermarket. However, by the time he was 34 years old, Shinji had gotten himself into legal trouble. In June 2012, he used a knife to rob a convenience store. He could make $20,000, around $200, but he would get caught in the end. Shinji was given a 3.5-year prison term by the police. He planned to convince the prosecution at his trial that he hated being part of the community. After being granted his freedom in 2016, he returned to his apartment in Saitama City. In the city of Kyoto, Kyoto Animation has been steadily expanding over the years. Furthermore, Kyoto Animation has been holding an annual awards show for the industry since 2009. In order to engage with their fan base and give talented authors more exposure, they decided to hold a writing competition in which entrants could submit their works for consideration by Kyoto Animation. The winning stories of this contest will be published under the company's imprint and, hopefully, will be considered for an anime adaptation in the future. The prize money of 1 million yen, about $10,000, and the prestige of the award itself create a heated atmosphere of competition. And this is how Shinji Aoba and Kyoto Animation first met. In 2017 and 2014, the author submitted 2 stories to the studio. In Japan, anime is so widely watched that it is estimated that 35% of the population watches it weekly or more often. And for Shinji, he was very heavily in that category. He spent almost every day of the year heavily engrossing himself in anime and gaming because he was a stay-at-home type of guy. Unfortunately, the judges at Kyoto Animation did not give his submissions a chance beyond the first round. The repeated rejections hurt Shinji emotionally and frustrated him. But the resentment toward Kyoto Animation would just begin here, and Shinji's already damaged mentality would continue to deteriorate. After being released from prison, Shinji had become increasingly estranged from his loved ones. The truth is, he barely had any. His father committed suicide in 1999, and ever since then he has avoided his siblings. In 2018, Shinji manifested a resentful, antisocial personality. He turned bitter since he had no one to love and care for him. His neighbors, whom he rarely spoke to, were also getting increasingly hostile because of his isolation. After Kyoto Animation rejected his stories in late 2018, Shinji became mentally ill. His life would change in a significant way that would lead him to his worst hour. One night he stayed in and watched more anime. This time it was a production by Kyoto Animation. However, he found common ground in his delusional and solitary worldview. The link was that what he'd been witnessing looked awfully familiar. In actuality, it was his story, the one he entered into the competition the previous year. Kyoto Animation had stolen from him. This infuriated Shinji, so they could expect to hear from him about it at Kyoto Animation. In the same week in October, staff received over 200 death threats via email. The sender used anonymizing software to protect their identity. The police were alerted, but the sender's identity could not be determined because the emails had been sent through the anonymous Tor network. Maybe we can hazard a guess, though. The death threats ended, but temporary police patrols were placed around the building. The next year, however, revenge would soon take place in a much more sinister way. Sunday, July 14, 2019. Even though 9 months had passed, nothing had changed in Shinji's life. Matsumoto, a 27-year-old QC engineer, was lounging around on the couch taking things easy for the weekend. Matsumoto, or Matsu, and Shinji were neighbors, and another neighbor upstairs was putting together furniture at the same time. Shinji, however, mistook him for Matsu. They frequently argued over loudness, with Shinji typically being the louder of the two. Shinji began pounding on the wall that separated his apartment from Matsu's. Matsu, ever the gentleman, went to Shinji's front door to assure him that the noise wasn't coming from him. Shinji yelled at Matsu as he slammed open his front door and yanked the collar of his shirt and saying, "You're too loud, shut up, I'm going to kill you, I have nothing to lose." Shinji would ultimately let go of Matsu, and he would walk to the police station to report the assault since she was too afraid to stay at home. However, by the time the police arrived at Shinji's home to confront him, he had already vanished. On the 15th of July, Shinji took the Shinkansen bullet train to Tokyo, where he slept the night at a hotel in the city's central business district before continuing on to Kyoto the following day. Multiple spots along his route caught him on CCTV. The one located at a cybercafe to the south of Kyoto Station. He spent the night at a different motel in the area. On Wednesday, July 17th, Shinji went into a hardware store wearing the same trousers and red t-shirt he'd been wearing for the previous 3 days and purchased a metal trolley. He then drove the trolley 6 miles to the north, where he refueled with 10 gallons of gas from a Ness gas station. After filling up his gas trolley, Shinji rolled it along the Uji River in the direction of Kyoto Animation. He would stay in a hotel for the night, and his plans for the next day were nothing but evil. On Thursday, July 18th, Shinji brought his gas-filled cart to the Kyoto Animation office. It was 10:31 in the morning, and there were about 70 people inside, busily at work. Shinji then hurriedly entered the building via its main entrance. He tipped over one of the gasoline buckets. He whipped out a lighter and said, "You will die." 10 seconds after being lit, The bucket of gasoline burst, engulfing the entire first level in flames. The second story caught fire as well, within 5 seconds. Within a minute of the explosion, the third-floor windows were shattered and black smoke was billowing from every crack and crevice. However, despite the fact that Shinji Aoba was still alive after lighting the canister on fire and then having it explode less than 10 seconds later, he was literally on fire. He bolted from the building and collapsed on a nearby street. Unaware of the monster's identity, bystanders rushed to Shinji's aid. He would get back to his senses very quickly. He jumped to his feet and fled as soon as he could. 2 employees at Kyoto Animation, however, did recognize him. They ran after him and then hit him so hard that he fell to the ground. The cops then got involved and caught up with him. When they learned who he was, they asked him why he had done it. Shinji shouted, "They plagiarize my work. I demand to speak to the company president." Firefighters arrived quickly, but it was too late for half the people inside. 5 more agonizing hours of fire would pass without a break. Later that night, rescue personnel located the bodies of 33 workers. There were 3 on the ground floor, 11 on the second floor, and 19 on the top floor, where a door that wasn't accessible from the inside blocked access. 3 more people who were in the building at the time of the attack died from their wounds in the weeks that followed, bringing the total death toll to 36 out of the estimated 1,000 people who were there at the time of the attack. After the incident, Japan was in a state of complete shock. As the news about the fire got worse, everyone in the country, the world, and the anime community became angry and sad. Shinji Aoba committed one of the largest mass murders in the nation since the end of World War II. While emergency crews were treating Shinji on the sidewalk, the cops learned that he had a backup strategy. 6 knives were discovered that had been stashed away, presumably for use in the event that his arson plot failed. The Kyoto police were unable to formally arrest Shinji despite the fact that multiple eyewitnesses identified him as the prime suspect. 6 unused knives were discovered on his person, and shortly thereafter, CCTV footage showed him at various locations with a cart full of gasoline. He had been burned so terribly all over that he was unconscious from the pain. Although police obtained a warrant for his arrest, they were unable to legally arrest him until a medical test determined that he would be able to survive in a detention facility. After the incident, Shinji remained unconscious for weeks, despite only having a 1% chance of survival. And whether you think it was a miracle or a bad thing, Shinji would live through his injuries. He would be declared out of immediate danger by his doctors in September 2019. However, human skin for grafting was in short supply due to the low rates of organ donation in Japan. So it was the appropriate call to prioritize the victim's need for donor skin over Shinji's. And since no donor was ever going to come forward, Shinji received the first ever all-artificial skin graft in Japan. Shinji would finally be able to talk to the police in September 2019, at which point he stated again that he was the one who started the fire. He would then go on to say, "I had a grudge against Kyoto Animation. I thought that if I sprayed gasoline around the building while setting the fire, I could kill more people. So that's why I did that." 10 months after the attack, in May 2020, Shinji was finally deemed fit for arrest. However, by this time, the world had already begun its descent into a pandemic. Shinji Aoba's narrative would continue slowly but without the previous level of global attention. On May 27, 2020, he was officially arrested, and by December 2020, he was also formally charged. The 42-year-old was undeniably guilty of his crimes. He admitted that he was so angry because he believed Kyoto Animation had stolen one of his ideas and put it in one of their anime without giving him credit or paying him for it. He said, "The thing Kyoto Animation copied from me was the scene in Tsurune, where the main characters buy discounted meat. Reports claim that the scene is extremely generic, but Kyoto Animation insists that they didn't steal anything." In the days after the studio massacre, Kyoto Animation said they didn't know of any contest entries by Shinji, but when they looked more closely, they found that he had entered his own novel. This would bring up again, though, the fact that his book had been turned down in the first round of reviews and forgotten by the company. 6 months after the attack, Shinji underwent a psychological evaluation, and the results confirmed that he was indeed mentally coherent and aware of the consequences of his actions when he set the fire. This opens the door for Shinji to face maximum penalties under the law, and given that Japan allows the death sentence under certain circumstances, and that this is one of the greatest mass killings in over 70 years, he doesn't stand a good chance. Additionally, Kyoto Animation stated that they believe Shinji should be prosecuted to the fullest extent possible under Japanese law. The current status of the case against Shinji Aoba is that he has been found guilty of the charges against him and is currently being held in a correctional facility awaiting his sentence. After the terrible deaths, people all across the world came out to Kyoto Animation to show their support. The business established a contribution account to give financial support to the living victims and the families of the deceased. Over $30 million would accumulate in the bank account, and it would be distributed to the rightful owners. In addition, fans collected nearly $2.3 million USD through a separate GoFundMe to revive Kyoto Animation and the studio, with the funds arriving in December 2019. The company's productions naturally suffered delays or cancellations, but at this point, the vast majority of them have resumed operations. Shinji left an unsightly mark on the planet at that location, which has since been destroyed. The president of Tokyo Animation, Hideaki Hata, has said that he is considering demolishing the structure in favor of a public park and memorial. Even after the incident, the majority of employees remained at their jobs. The majority of them understood that the harsh reality was not reflective of the corporation, and for others, continuing in the footsteps of their lost colleagues was the only way they could feel connected to them. Since 2019, the country has also taken additional measures to increase fire safety in buildings and has begun to implement restrictions on the amount of fuel individuals can purchase at one time. We don't know what will happen to Shinji just yet, but we do know that he wasn't able to halt production at Kyoto Animation. While the studio was damaged in the attack, its owners hope that it may one day serve as a memorial to those who were killed there. And that's where we are right now, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I sincerely value your time and attention, so thank you for watching yet another of my videos today. As horrifying as I knew this story was, I don't think I fully grasped it when I first heard it on the news. Shinji Aoba is an evil person. No matter how long he has left to live, I wish him nothing but agony and regret. What are your thoughts on Shinji Aoba? Is he psychologically sound, or is this someone who has gone too far beyond being a purely nasty person? What do you think? Tell me in the comments.